New York to Nashville, you came down for the first time. Never saw you coming, but I'm glad that I ran into you. Showing you the city, you're making it feel brand new.
I'm Matt Landau from VRMB, and this is Unlocked, Season 9, Home Runners. This episode features Amanda Hoffman, who's the VP of Finance and Accounting at Highgate Homes. And when you meet Amanda for the first time, you typically realize how bright and tenacious she is for her age. Our industry talks a lot these days about a departing generation of wisdom. That is, operators who are exiting their businesses because the timing was right and taking all of their knowledge with them. But what you don't hear about a lot is the new minds, the new leaders who will carry that torch. And Amanda is definitely a torch carrier for me. In this conversation, we talk about where finance and vacation rentals are merging, why applying hotel models of finance is not always accurate, in fact, more often than not, downright frustrating, how Amanda's current boss basically allowed her to blow up the finance division in order to build it back up from scratch, and what Amanda has learned in that process and how she advises those who are not self-professed finance nerds to proceed. We also talk about some of her discoveries in leadership and how the only way to combat being called a devil for your role in short-term rentals is to be the reputation you want to change. This episode is brought to you by Point Central, the leaders in smart home automation, and Breezeway, a property care and operations platform. As a warning, I'm a real stickler for sound quality, and it was my microphone, my office, at the beginning of this interview that features a drill from somebody in the background. As with every episode this season, we kick off by asking Amanda, what does the phrase home runners mean to you?
To me, the word home runner, the phrase home runner, I think specific to the industry, has to do with where we are at in the industry right now. Industries go through phases. Generally, people think of 5 phases, where there's the startup phase, where there's not a lot of demand, there's not a lot of knowledge about the industry worldwide, and then it moves into the growth phase, where profitability increases, demand increases, everybody wants to get a piece of the game. There's a lot of profit, margins are increasing, and I think we've been in that phase for the last decade or so. And then the next phase is typically called the shakeout phase, when there's consolidation. Growth rates don't end, but they start slowing, and it starts shaking out people that aren't going to stay in it for the long term, the companies that weren't built sustainably, the companies that get eaten up by bigger companies. And I think we're sort of in this transition between the growth and the shakeout. And what's cool about that is there's an opportunity to really direct the industry. And so I think a home runner is somebody right now who's taking that opportunity, who's making changes, big and small changes within the industry, that's making a difference. And that's going to ultimately decide where we land when we're into the mature phase of the industry.
You sound like a scholar.
I think about that a lot.
And you are kind of now a scholar. Share your newfound academia.
Yeah, so I am currently back in school to get my second master's degree. My first one was in business administration, and I'm now going back to school for finance.
And Amanda, it was this Georgetown move that turned you on to the difference between obituary values and career values. Explain what you were sharing with me as we were walking up the hill there in Tennessee.
Yeah, that's right. That's something that really stuck with me. It was during my orientation. So I got to fly out to Washington, D.C. and do an orientation at Georgetown in person, which was fun for me because I've only been to the East Coast a couple of times and I've never been to Washington, D.C. But during the orientation, they talked a lot about Jesuit values, because Georgetown is a Jesuit school. And I didn't know much about it before I walked in the room. I've heard the word before, but I didn't know much about it. And so one of the slides that they had that they talked through, we actually had a Jesuit that was speaking to us. And he talked about the difference between obituary values and career values, and how at your obituary at the end, you're not typically going to hear somebody say, oh, Amanda increased profitability at so and so company over the 5-year tenure. That's not the type of thing you ever hear in an obituary. You hear about the impact that they made on people and the impact they made on the world and the type of person that they were and what their reputation was. And so as you're going through life, think about both of those things, because your career values are important. It's important to have career goals and to want to make changes like that where you increase profitability, go for it. But at the end of the day, the thing that really matters is the impact that you make.
And I think I sort of took away from that, if you can settle on a value that is kind of both in a way, it's
Right.
both a career and an obituary value, that's a pretty good signal that you're on a right path.
I agree. And I think that's actually one of my favorite things about business. I'm kind of a business nerd, a finance nerd. And what I really like about it is that it's an opportunity to make a huge impact in the world. If you're a leader and you manage 10 people or you manage 500 people, that's a huge opportunity to impact their lives, because they spend most of their time at work. How can you enrich their lives by giving them purpose, by treating them like human beings, by caring about them? All these different things that you can do as a leader are really important. And in business, I know a lot of times it likes to get a bad rap of just being greedy and people trying to take advantage, and that's certainly out there. But it's also an opportunity to provide solutions to people, and to create good things and to create jobs. And so I think it's right. You are on the right path if you're choosing to focus on both and find that intersect between both.
And something I love about you is your passion for what you do. And I'd like for you to frame our conversation today for folks by sharing kind of your view of finance and vacation rentals and where you see yourself fitting in all of it.
Sure. I'll kind of start with just finance in general and then go into the industry. I feel like finance is also a really powerful tool to lift people out of poverty and to help people start businesses. And finance, again, is something that gets a really bad rap because this is kind of cheesy, but I always like to say this. With great responsibility, or with great power comes great responsibility. Get that from Spider-Man. I'm not sure if he was the first one who said it, but I got it from Spider-Man. And so I think finance is one of those things where there is a lot of risk that it can be used for evil. But on the flip side, there's also so much opportunity to use it for good. When you think of third world countries and somebody being able to start a business, they couldn't do that without somebody financing them, without somebody loaning them money to buy their first cow for their farm or whatever it is. There's a lot of opportunity to do so much good with finance, and it gets overlooked a lot of the time. And I think specifically within the industry, to bring back to the cycle that we're in right now of this shakeout phase, what's going to happen is those that haven't built a sustainable business in the sense of financially sustainable are going to get shaken out of the industry. And so it's really this need to level up our accounting and finance and how we're looking at things and how we're measuring our business so that our businesses can sustain through it. And as we mature as an industry, the expectations of our financial health levels up as well. I mean, we think about bigger players getting into the game that have been in either the hotel industry or other industries where they're mature and their financial statements are extremely complicated and there's a lot of guidance on how to do it exactly right. And right now there isn't much guidance in the vacation rental world, and there's a lot of people doing it differently. And I've looked at some different financial statements from different companies, and people use different names for different categories. They have it in a different order on the financial statements. And so right now it's just this time to level up as an industry. And I find that really exciting because it's fun for me. And I like that there's so much opportunity to kind of direct where it goes.
It's interesting because in a way, uniqueness, let's just say, of vacation rental businesses' financials, period, the uniqueness is reflective of the uniqueness, the character that makes our industry great. Everyone's one of a kind. Everyone's kind of doing their own thing. And that's why we also kind of still struggle with conveying standards to the general public. You never really know what you're going to get.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting piece to it. And I think to add in that it's a very fractional industry. And I don't think that's going to change. I don't think we're going to become like the hotel industry in that sense where you don't see the smaller players. I think that's a uniqueness to our industry that's going to sustain itself. And there's a lot of good about that. But one of the challenges is that it's hard to come together to make decisions about where the industry should go when we all have very unique ways of looking at our business, because we should.
Yeah. Amen to that. So explain what you do at Highgate, which is also a company I don't think everybody is super familiar with.
Sure. So Highgate Hotels, and they are a hotel management company. Essentially, we manage over 500 properties, and Highgate decided that they wanted to start a vacation rental arm using, being able to leverage the experience from the hotel side in creating a product that is the main goal is that it's reliable and consistent and brings kind of that hotel reliability to a vacation rental.
And you are in finance. They've
Yes.
hired you because you have these passionate views, these original thoughts on how to apply the established and influential world of finance to this little niche. What challenges have you encountered in this position?
Yeah, so I'm the VP of finance there, and they hired me to build it out from scratch, which was what drew me to the job. So I have my background is in finance and accounting. That's where I started. I've been in manufacturing, I've done taxes, and I've also been in operations. I was a general manager at Vacasa for a few years. And I think that's one of the reasons that I ended up getting the job, was being able to have that operational perspective in finance, which a lot of times is hard to find somebody that can think about, what is my role as a finance person? My role is to support operations. My role is to make it easy on them, is to solve problems for them, to provide funding for them. And it is a support position. And when I was interviewing for the job, I actually was in operations at the time and didn't think I wanted to go back to finance full time. And so I initially wasn't sure about even taking the interview. And I ended up taking the interview and hearing about the vision. And my main question to them and my main point to them was, I used to work for Wyndham also. And so what I experienced at Wyndham was taking the hotel model and trying to tweak it for vacation rentals. And that was really frustrating to me, because I felt like, there is some crossover for sure, but at the same time, it's very different, and it needs to be started from scratch. It shouldn't be just tweaked from hotel. We can take ideas from the hotel side, but it should really start from scratch. If we really want to be measuring the financial health of a vacation rental, we can't just take that hotel model. And I didn't have the autonomy to really do anything about it. And so when I was interviewing at Highgate, I said, I've done this before. I've seen this done. Wyndham tried it. They ended up selling to Vacasa. It didn't work out for them. So if I'm going to take this job, I need to know that I'm going to be able to start from scratch and be able to have autonomy to really figure out what this looks like and what's going to be, the future of finance and accounting for us. And then how does this direct the industry? And they told me a story. Actually, the one interview that made me really excited about Highgate was talking about, it was with HR, and she was talking about how she felt like the system that we'd put a lot of money into needed to be changed. And this was back when she started a long time ago. And she felt like she went to, her boss and said, this just really isn't working. And he said, all right, well, blow it up. And she said, well, respectfully, we've kind of sunk a lot of money into this. And he said, if it's not working and people aren't using it, then it doesn't add value to us. So figure out what does and go do it. And then he walked out and left. And I remember getting goosebumps after hearing that story. because I went, oh my gosh, I mean, this is what I've been waiting for my whole career. I've been thinking and thinking about all the things and all the ways that I want to do it, and thinking, gosh, the only way I'm ever going to do this is to start my own company. And then here comes Highgate saying, hey, we're going to give you the autonomy to do it. And it has been that way. And so it's been really fun and exciting to have that freedom to search and figure out really how we're going to do this the best.
I would have been like totally terrified. I was like, wait a minute, you're actually giving me what I want? You're
Right.
actually like, it's my responsibility now to blow something up and then
Right.
to build it up again from scratch. And that's
Yeah.
really the test of the difference between an idea that might be good because everybody's full of ideas and actually building it, actually creating it. And so did you then literally begin creating it from day one?
Yeah, that's exactly it, and it's pretty funny because I feel like I came in with a lot less experience than someone might normally come in with this position, and I remember kind of pumping myself up before I started that I said to myself, "You're going to make a mistake. You're going to screw up. You're going to fall flat on your face. You're going to put your foot in your mouth. You're going to say something stupid. You're going to get it wrong. All that's going to happen. Just be ready for it, and then move on to the next thing and try again." And I also had to tell myself that their expectations, meaning my boss and Highgate, their expectations of me were what my experience was. And they hired me because they thought that I had that tenacity to figure it out versus just coming in and knowing the right answer from the start. And that's been how it's come to fruition. So it's been fun.
I love that just as advice for anyone who's looking to move to grow in their career. There's something really powerful about having a strong feeling about the way something should be done. Entering into an interview or a negotiation with a really clear, convicted vision in a way that just wows the other party into realizing like, holy moly, this person, I want this person on my team. This person knows this thing better than I do. And then, of course, having the follow through and the wherewithal to actually execute the mission. I think that's how leaps are made in a way.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I went in that interview asking a lot of questions and being, I knew I was in a good spot. I was fortunate to be in a spot where I was happy where I was at, and I was about up for a promotion where I was at before, and I didn't need the job. And so to me, they had to speak to me. It had to be something that I really wanted, and I was really excited about it. But I went in there kind of hard charging, going, I'm not going to do it this way, so don't expect that. And what are you guys thinking about this? And well, are you guys planning this? And well, no, we haven't thought about that. All right, well, that's important. We got to think about that. Just because I had the confidence knowing that, if this doesn't work out, I will have had good experience speaking with some really intelligent, smart people, and gotten my name out there and gotten some practice. And then the next time an opportunity comes up, I'm that much more prepared for it.
Is that the famous Rosie in the background?
Yes, it is. She's so cute. That's my golden retriever, Rosie.
So I want to shift into some advice/action mode for our listeners because it's not often we get to nerd out over finance here on this podcast. It's certainly not one of my specialties. And I'm curious if when you meet a new property manager and they're picking your brain about things to do and ways to focus on the financial health of their business, what are some of the top level pieces of advice that you share?
Yeah, I'll start by, really high level. It seems to scare a lot of people, and finance can certainly be scary at a certain level, but I think to get started, the basics are really not that scary if you start diving into it. And, I thought a lot about this before the podcast because I don't want to bore people. I want people to listen, and more than that, I want people to be able to get something out of it that's actionable. And so I think if you think about it this way, number one, on the most basic level of your financial health of your company is you sit down and you estimate your costs. You sit down and you estimate your revenues. You create goals, and then you continually measure yourself against those goals. And essentially, if you think, you're a property manager and you sit down, you can think through all the vendors that you pay. Just think about all the cash out of your bank. You've got that list, that's readily available. estimating your revenues, maybe that's a little bit harder, but there's a lot of tools out there to think through based on your ADR and how many nights you've rented and things like that. You can think through. You can pretty easily estimate what you think your revenues are going to be. And then based on that, you know what your margins are, and you can say, okay, here's the leftover money. What can I spend it on? Maybe you don't have a margin there, and now you need to dig in to see, okay, what expenses do I need to cut, or what revenues do I need to increase those margins? And once you have those goals set, then you start measuring your actual performance against those goals. And as you start to feel comfortable with those things, you can start leveling up and start getting into financial ratios and start getting into more complicated financial statements that tell you more in detail, okay, now is my housekeeping profitable? Do I want it to be profitable? Those types of things. And that's where it gets into, there's no one size fits all in the industry, and that applies to finance as well. And so you have to determine in your market what makes sense to you, what makes sense to your guests, what makes sense to your employees, and create those goals yourself. And then the key is to continually measure your performance against those goals.
And I'm like the perfect candidate here because I'm terrible with finance. And the simple act of having a pulse on how much money is coming in, how much money is going out, and referring back to those benchmarks, those goals, is a really about the least one could ask of somebody who's financially healthy. What else you got for me?
I think the other thing to think through is there's sometimes people mix things into their operational budgets or their operational financial statements that shouldn't be in there. And you want to make sure that when you're putting together a profit and loss statement for your operations, that the only thing that's going in there is the operations. So, for example, the basic is to separate out your personal expenses. So if you're running your own property management company and it's you and you have a team, it's a sole proprietorship or an LLC, you got to make sure that you're moving your personal expenses out. And you can get some advice from somebody for an hour, a financial person or a tax person if you need to for an hour, that can kind of walk through some of the basics of how to separate that. The other big one is debt. So you make debt payments, let's say you have any debt on your company, or if you own houses, you have debt on your houses and you're going to make these debt payments. It's important to understand that in terms of cash, but you don't want to mingle that with your operational expenses, because you want to be able to tell if your company itself is profitable, regardless of the way that it's been financed. And I think that's a big one that people mix up. And so you want to be able to look at it that way. But then separately, I would say, the number one thing you should do, and this is if somebody hired me to walk into a company, the very first thing I would do is I would look at cash management. It's definitely overlooked. There are lots of different statistics out there about when and how businesses fail. I've heard that 90% fail in the first year. I think that's inflated. Most research that I've seen is that it's about 20% the first year, 30% the second year, and then after 10 years, it's about 70%. And the top reasons for why businesses fail is a lack of cash management, a lack of measuring their financial health. And so, if you think about it, if you're going to do a renovation on your house, you're not just going to go in blind and start saying, oh, I want to do this and I want to paint this and rip out that and rip out. You got to think about what your budget is first. And so with cash management, it's about knowing what cash is going out over the next 60, 90 days and what cash is coming in. And if you have enough cash coming in to cover the cash going out, well, you're doing great, but continue to monitor that every week in case a new expense pops up or something happens in the market where an event gets canceled and you have a bunch of cancellations. You have to make sure that you're continually updating your cash, because what happens is if you can get ahead of it, then you have a lot more opportunity to figure out how you're going to make up that gap for the cash. You've got to get a loan, you've got to reach out to friends and family, you've got to get more revenue coming in, whatever it is, but it gives you a lot more runway to do it. And that makes sure that you're, making payroll every 2 weeks, that you're paying the bills that you need to pay to keep the lights on. Those types of things are so essential that it's mind-boggling to me that most people don't have a weekly cash flow that they're going through, especially the earlier stage a company is.
So is this the kind of thing, cash management, not intermingling personal expenses with the business, dividing debt separately from the actual operations? Are these the kind of things that the longer it goes, the harder it gets to reset?
Not necessarily. I think it's something that you can start at any time and it's helpful. Obviously, to get started from the get-go is best case scenario, but you can start anytime and it's going to be really helpful. With cash management, for instance, you could start right now, and no matter what, cash management is about the next 90 days. So wherever you are, you need to be worrying about the next 90 days. So if you decide to start now, you should be worrying about the next 90 days.
Okay, lovely. So listeners, if your cash management is not up to par, it's never too late. In fact, today is the best day to start. I love that. Amanda, keep going. This is wonderful.
Sure. So, yeah, the next thing I would say is when I talk to property management companies is about budgeting and how to do budgeting. So, there are templates out there. If you don't feel comfortable, I would reach out to somebody to get started. If you don't feel like you're at the point where you can hire a full-time, finance or accounting person, there's all kinds of Upworks where you can find, what they call a fractional CFO that can come and help you walk through things. And it's really not that expensive. And if it's $1,000, I guarantee you it'll be the best $1,000 you ever spent for your business. Make sure that you have your budget set. And then what I advise is that you have budgets and you have forecasts. And your budget is something that you set at the beginning of the year for the year, and it holds you accountable throughout the year. So you don't adjust that budget at all, leave it as is. The other reason for that is that if you might have bonuses, employee bonuses tied to a budget, and you don't want to be changing that budget throughout the year, I would, at the end of the year, adjust in case there were major, challenges like, a storm or an outside event, something that would have affected it to make it fair. But at the end of the day, you don't want to adjust that budget because you want to hold yourself accountable.
Because you want to know if you went over it or under it for the next year, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I will say, back to that other question about starting soon, that is one of those things that's nice to, when you have historical data, your budgets do get more accurate, and you have, you can compare against prior year, which is important to have. And if you're starting today, you're not likely going to have that prior year, and that's okay. Everybody starts from somewhere. But as you begin to have data, you're going to start to understand your business better and better every month that you go through it. So for your forecasts, you want to go through ideally at least monthly. And what that is you're reforecasting the remainder of the year based on new information that you have. So that might be, I decided to hire 2 more people, so I got to increase payroll for the rest of the year. The consumables, the toilet paper that I'm buying goes up twice it's twice the cost that we thought it was going to be. So let's increase that cost. Let's increase that expense line in the forecast moving forward. And the importance of that is for planning. You do really need to know and get the most accurate forecast so that you can plan out your cash. That helps your cash management. That helps you understand whether you need to cut expenses in another area because of that. And if you were just to go against your budget for that, you would be sort of flying blind because the budget just gets farther and farther away from actual as you get away from it. And that's the other big piece of advice is your forecast and your budget will be wrong immediately after you set it. There's no perfect forecast and budget. And so a lot of times people, depending on your personality, will want to get super granular and super detailed and build in a lot of formulas or keep thinking about it and keep thinking about it. And at some point, it's not valuable to you to spend that much time. I'm sure you have a lot of other things to spend your time on. So set it, do your best, and then continually improve it as you go.
And now a word from our sponsors. Point Central provides smart property solutions for smart vacation property managers. They help streamline operations, protect the property, and enhance the guest experience using keyless access. Why? Because guests are tired after traveling, duh. And being able to go directly to that property with keyless access instead of stopping at a manager's office, this is no longer a luxury. This is a standard practice. Plus, everybody loves avoiding extra trips due to lost keys, not to mention the constant cost of rekeying. Point Central partners stay aware with an activity log of who enters and leaves the property, which helps keep track of cleaning and maintenance crews as well. You can also gain control of your utility bills with their smart thermostats. Schedule set points so guests won't be able to drastically raise or lower the temperatures, for instance. You can ensure the temperature stays consistent when the unit is vacant. Prevent costly maintenance projects caused by water leaks, mold, or HVAC issues with real-time alerts that allow you to be proactive. Visit pointcentral.com/VRMB to learn more. And Breezeway, whose property care and operations platform helps you coordinate, communicate, and verify the detailed work and deliver the best service experience to your guests. With tools for intelligent task scheduling, quality assurance, real-time work coordination, guest messaging, supplies management, owner reporting, and more, oh my! Breezeway helps thousands of short-term rental managers and hospitality operators increase your operational efficiency and eliminate hours of manual work. This allows you to boost your service revenue. It was created by the founding team of Flipkey, which was since acquired by TripAdvisor, and Breezeway is just elevating the experience at every property they touch. Visit breezeway.io/VRMB and get implementation fees waived. That's a $1,000 value right there. Okay, let's get back to the show. So these are really fundamental practices for any vacation rental owner or manager listening, who, if everybody was doing them, the group would be more sustainable, would be more healthy. What about standards across the board? If you had a magic wand, if you were the fairy godmother of vacation rental finance, which, by the way, Halloween just took place, you missed your chance there. If you were the fairy godmother, what standards would you love to see across the board that would help make our sector as a whole more consistent and predictable?
That's a great question. Well, first I'll say the importance of standards in finance and accounting is that we can compare accurately against each other. So there's a lot of investing going on, not just from large companies, but I just read about the vacation rental REIT that came out. I forget the company last week, and so you're starting to have more investing into the industry on a smaller level as well, and it's expanding. And so we want to be able to trust the financial statements that we're looking at, that we are being able to accurately measure the financial health of that company. And that's where standards come in. That's why they're important, so that if we understand that everybody is treating, at least at a basic level, treating their financial statements the same way, then you can really evaluate where your money should go and what the best investment might be. Also, with that, if you are looking to sell your company and get acquired, you're going to be best off having standardized financial statements and be doing all of these things already, because it will help you tell the story about your business if you've got a financial story behind it as well. So I've heard the shoebox story too, with the shoebox of receipts, and a company coming in to try to buy another company, and all they've got is a shoebox of receipts. So you're going to make it really difficult to sell your company if you can't tell the financial story.
And what do you think are the consequences of an inaccurate financial story?
The consequences are that you're telling people, money is really important and where people put their funds. And especially as smaller people are getting into investing, and they can't evaluate, they're going to be throwing their money into a company that, let's say, for example, isn't as financially healthy as they say they are. And as these things start to fail and people start to feel the effects of not being able to trust financial statements, less money will flow in. I think that's the biggest consequence, and money flowing into the industry is what we want.
Are there different kinds of money that can flow in?
Yes, I think it's kind of back to what we were speaking about earlier, what I was talking about earlier, which is that there's definitely opportunities for money to direct in a way we don't want it to direct, I guess. And I think that's true with any industry. And so, yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't know what the answer to that is. I think that kind of leads into something else that's really interesting, which is just, I think largely as an industry, we're still under the radar in the world, and to, let's say the federal government or even some state governments, about how to handle what our industry is doing. And I think that we need to be thinking about what that's going to be. I don't think anybody knows how this is going to evolve as an industry, but it will, and we won't be under the radar forever. And there will be more regulations on finance and on operations within our industry. And if we don't get ahead of thinking about what that means, we won't be able to be proactive and prepare for it. And I think that as an industry, we have to make sure that we're positively impacting the world while we're, hosting guests and building the profits of our own business.
I know leadership is an important thing to you, and I'm curious how you describe your style of leadership, how you think about it internally, at least.
I do very much enjoy leadership. I'm in a role right now where I have one employee, and I will say it's kind of a nice mental break. But I do really enjoy managing large teams, and I would say I'm a collaborative leader. I feel like I'd be dumb to think that I could just come up with all the best ideas by myself when I have all of these brains around me that have all of these different perspectives and experiences and perspectives on the business itself just based on their role, that I really, really enjoy pulling information about out of people and seeing, you really sometimes do have to pull it too. And so it's finding what each person needs individually and finding out what their goals are and what they want to do and where their skills are and where they're going to be the best fit, and then helping them to see that potential within themselves. When I first started in leadership, I feel like I'm kind of an overachiever, and I always go for perfection, and I've always wanted to move up. And when I first started, I used to think that everybody had that same goal, that they wanted to just move up quickly and get autonomy. And I realized that that's actually fairly rare, that most people they're happy with their position, and maybe they want to grow and they want to maybe they want to move sideways, maybe like variety, maybe they want to move up one level and sit there, maybe their family's just way more important to them and they don't want to be sacrificing any of that for work, and work is just a way for them to spend time with their family, whatever it is. And everybody's goal is okay, and it's awesome. And the first thing as a leader to do is to figure out what it is that they want out of what you can do to help them achieve those goals.
Mm. Just having a lovely conversation this morning with one of my fellow swimmers, and he said that for him, growth happens throughout the course of life. You want it, you need it. And he said he felt like he arrived at a moment where there was no more growth, that he had reached this balance, this, like, I think he used the word homeostasis of happiness between his job and his family and friends and his social life. He said that he felt that level of happiness and contentment, is that the word? Contentness, was like a holy grail, and that he wasn't looking to ascend any further in his professional career. In fact, he was kind of looking forward to retiring. Where do you think happiness fits into the role of a vacation rental professional in this industry that is hospitality, but is also leisure in beautiful destinations? It's just different.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because people use words that words mean different things to different people. I get really excited about communicating effectively, and to me, not to get off on a tangent, but I really like to find the exact right word to explain something, and I usually give too much context to things because I really enjoy communicating exactly what I want to communicate to people. And so I find that, using the word growth, I think it sounds like this person that you're talking to is talking about in terms of maybe the growth of their company or the growth of moving up in a position. But I find that I think growing as a human being and growing internally, I don't think that should ever stop. I think that you should continually ensure that you're self-aware and that you're growing yourself as a human and how you impact the world, and that just never stops. But I think in terms of business and career, I can only really speak to myself in that for me, I'm addicted to the challenge. I'm a problem solver, and I love a good challenge. And so if you want to hook me on something, throw a challenge in my face and I won't be able to turn it down. I'm not super financially motivated, which is probably funny for a financial person to not be incredibly financially motivated. But for me, it's more about feeling this purpose that I'm solving a problem, that I'm using my brain, that I'm making an impact, that I'm improving something. To me, I could do that for the rest of my life, and it doesn't matter what title I have or what I'm doing. It's just that I want to be challenging myself.
It's almost like the other things that happen are just bonus at that point.
Right, absolutely. And I feel like I've been very lucky in my career that having that mindset has just kind of, like you said, that bonus has been that I've been able to move up and move into positions without having the focus of really wanting to move up, but just wanting to really challenge myself. And if an opportunity comes up, I'm the first person to raise my hand and go, "Well, I'll try that. Do you have any experience?" "No, but I'll try it."
And for people who aren't passionate about finance, because finance is a very particular specialization in which, like, you either really pretty much really know it or probably you don't. I guess maybe what I've learned in this conversation is that there doesn't have to be a extremes. There is a space in the middle. But for people who are maybe not as passionate about something hyper specific like finance, who are running their businesses, do you think it really just boils down to finding the stuff that they enjoy the most and that they're the best at and focusing on that and trying to delegate the stuff that they're not?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important part about being a leader is putting the right people on the bus. And putting the right people on the bus, one means that you're finding people that are passionate and good people and that want to work hard for your business. But the other thing about putting people on the right bus is people that bring in the skills that you don't have. And so you have to be very self aware about the things that you're good at and the things that you aren't good at, and focus your energies on the things that you're really good at and hire for the things that you're not. And even especially with finance, I think it can be very cyclical in that there's a lot more work in the beginning of the month, and then it's a little bit slow during the rest of the month, and you might not need a full-time person. There's lots of opportunities to hire, like I said earlier, like a gig type person that can come, a fractional CFO that can kind of help you put together your budget, do a 2 hour review once a month with you. That really isn't, you're saving a lot of money on not hiring a full-time person if you're not there yet, but you can hire somebody to help you with it. But yeah, you just have to be self-aware about and surround yourself with people that can fill the gaps.
And you mentioned Upwork earlier. If someone doesn't have access to a great finance mind or employee, how do you normally recommend someone go about finding that person to fill that gap?
Yeah, I would say Upwork is a great opportunity for that. I know there's other sites out there that I don't know the names of, but you can go on and you just search for finance, and people will list their skills and what they're good at and what they want to help with, and they'll list their hourly rate right on there, and you can negotiate that too. If it's a little high, you can tell them, it's a little high for me. I'd really like to use you, but I want to try this rate. You can do that, but you can find exactly what they can offer, based on their portfolio, their summary.
Okay. And maybe asking around to other managers in the community, seeing what kind of companies they're using. Is there any services or products that you are getting especially excited about moving forward in the finance world?
We are starting to use a new accounting software that I'm really excited about. It's kind of an up and comer called Striven. And the reason I'm excited about it is I think they have an opportunity to be enterprise level. And they're a little bit more enterprise than I guess QuickBooks. And QuickBooks is great if you're using QuickBooks or you're small or you're, not sure what to do. QuickBooks is a great solution. I recommend it. But Striven, I have this opportunity to sort of build it out with them and partner with them to build it out to be more focused on the vacation rental space, because I don't think there is a product like that out there. You can customize a lot of the accounting softwares, but that can cost a lot of money to try and customize something. And so there aren't a lot of out of the box solutions. And I think Striven, they have some out of the box solutions that are industry specific, and they don't have one for vacation rentals yet. And I think maybe my side goal is to help them to have their own kind of vacation rental built out of the box that would then be usable by others in the industry.
So did you reach out to them and say, I am obsessed with vacation rentals. I'd like to give you input. Did they reach out to you?
Well, we're working with them right now, so we haven't gotten that far yet, but that is the goal.
I oftentimes think that the operators in our space, and I would certainly include finance under that umbrella, know the intricacies of the business so well, better clearly than any other expert on the planet. And that IP, it could be really valuable to companies that are trying to offer their service to our space. It could be applied in a lot of different areas of expertise, no?
Yeah, I totally agree. I love hearing about companies that want to have, product committees, product development committees where they bring in people from the industry to talk through. I think that's a brilliant idea. I think that kind of goes back to what I was saying about being a collaborative leader, is that that's collaboration right there. Is, if you're a software company and you're not an operations company, then why would you not bring people on that have expertise in what you're trying to build out? And having people be open to, as a property manager, yeah, I want to be in those discussions too, because that benefits me in the long run if these softwares are built more towards something that I can use that can improve my business down the line.
So shout out to Striven. You've been Amanda approved. Well, not yet. Just getting started. What about a person, Amanda, in the industry that you think embodies some of the future of our space?
Oh gosh, that's such a tough one. It's hard for me to come up with one person. I guess when you say that, the first thing that comes to mind is my former team that I started with at Vacation Palm Springs, and we went through a few acquisitions together. And just some of the leaders there, our housekeeping managers and our operations managers, and I think they really are the heartbeat of the industry. And I think that we do ourselves a disservice as leaders if we're not continually keeping them in the loop and continually getting their thoughts and their feedback, like obsessively getting their thoughts and feedback, I think is so important, and showing them how valuable they are to the organization and the industry. And so I think that's more what it is. I think, which also leads into what I think is really fascinating about our industry, is trying to scale but maintaining that element, that heartbeat of what our industry is. Because at the end of the day, we're still an industry where we are opening up our homes and we are providing hospitality to guests and to people that are celebrating. And it's in our specific market and it's our unique homes. And so it's just so important to maintain that unique feel in how we scale this. And I don't think anybody knows exactly what that's going to look like, but that's what we need to try and do.
And I know you're also very passionate about collaboration and these people, everybody that you just mentioned included, being part of the feedback loops and the collective wisdom exercises and working together. Are there any big areas that you think are most overlooked in terms of working together, or any ways you think maybe just one person who's listening to this could, their eyes might be opened in terms of what you've seen?
Well, I think it's important as a leader to think about how that feedback works. And it's not necessarily just you asking people for feedback. You have to build a culture of feedback that's sustainable if you step out of it. And it makes me think of the first leadership book I ever read, because my career started as an account in this industry, started as an accountant, and we had a general manager that ended up leaving, and I decided to apply for that position. I didn't think I would get it, but I just thought, I wanted to kind of expand my horizons. I wanted a new challenge. I wanted to learn something different, and ended up getting the job and then going, oh crap, I got to figure out how to do the job now. And so started reading leadership books and operational books. And actually, that's when I decided to go back to school to get my MBA, was because I felt like it could really add value. And so one of the first books that I read was called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. And I've read it a couple times now. And the big thing my biggest takeaway from that book was, so if you think about extreme ownership, it is taking ownership of all directions. So you take ownership of your employees' success, you take ownership of your coworkers' success, you take ownership of your boss's success. And one of the ways that works is, one of the examples in there was, let's say your company is a little bit too siloed, and uh, there's challenges between the accounting department and the operation department for some of the workflows. And so if I'm, putting myself in that accounting person's shoes, and let's say I'm not getting information in a timely manner, or I'm not getting the type of information that I need, instead of pointing fingers and saying, well, operations never gets it on time, they just don't care about it, they don't think it's important, they make my job harder, and you have this, now you have some infighting going on between, and you don't have a good feedback loop, and you're not sure where the real challenge is. Well, let's change that. Let's flip that perspective and say, okay, I'm an accounting person and I'm not getting the information that I need. How about I think about first how I'm contributing to this? What am I doing? Have I given them all the information? Have I explained to them why this is important to me? Do they even know? Is it that they don't care, or is it that they don't understand how it fits into the bigger picture? Is there something that I can do maybe to remind them? Is there all kinds of things? Think about how you contribute it to them, and then go to them and say, hey, here's a challenge that I'm having. Here's some of the things I'm thinking that I might be able to do to improve. And I want to make sure that we're on the same page about this, and then have a conversation about how to improve that. And then maybe it turns out that, yeah, you know what? They just didn't understand that it was so important to the dominoes falling for other things in your department, that they didn't prioritize it. Now that they understand that, they can give it to you on time, or do what they need to do, or help you come up with a better solution for how it's going to work. And that's how you create, in my mind, that's what it means to have a sustainable culture of feedback, where people feel comfortable and confident giving feedback to each other and working through those solutions without really having to bring in the boss or the GM to direct it.
Wow, that's a really beautiful sentiment. And I even think it applies to advocacy and community work, in the sense that if you're being an extreme owner of your role in your community, you're having feedback loops with the neighbors who are angry. And you're sitting in on the conversations, and you're listening, and you're trying to um, propose solutions. It's all very different than the person who's sitting back and avoiding all that responsibility, right?
Right. And yeah, when it comes to advocacy and regulatory environment, we can sit back and say, well, I don't contribute to this, or I don't contribute to that, or, well, my company, we operate in a way that's, that our neighbors like us, or whatever it is, whatever the excuse is to not get involved. But the reality is that the perception of our industry includes all of us together, and you don't get to just separate yourself. You're in the industry. And so taking ownership of being proactive and making sure that we are advocating for respectful property management, and that we can fit in and we can be a part of the ecosystem is on all of us to do.
So I'd like to loop back to where we first began, to your most amazing response to what home runner means to you. You said at the beginning phase is startup. The next phase is growth. The next phase was, what was it?
Shakeout.
The shakeout. And you said we were in between growth and the shakeout. What are the last remaining phases that people need to be aware of?
So the next phase is maturity, and maturity is where we will sit for the longest, and that's when it gets harder to enter. Entry into the market is going to be more difficult as standards raise, as margins are a little bit smaller. It's going to get harder for people to enter, and then we sort of stay on this maturity path for quite a while. And the last phase is decline, which happens to industries from time to time. Hopefully we create a sustainable base for, or sustainable foundation for that maturity phase, and it continues for a long time, but that's when it kind of settles into what it's going to be. And so I feel like accounting and finance is typically the last thing to really standardize and mature. But there are so many. That's my expertise, and so I know that there's so much opportunity in talking with others in the industry, that there is so much opportunity to set the foundation for other parts as well, so that once we get into that maturity phase, we directed it there, and it's what we want it to be.
And I'd even say if we create our obituary values now, by the time we get there, it will have been quite a wonderful ride because we will have been doing what we wanted all along.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think you can, just like you said, you can apply that to the industry as a whole too. I mean, what do we want our reputation to be as an industry? I'll share that I was once at a bar with some friends and had somebody tell me that they thought I was the devil for what I did. And that really, really took me back. And I had to think a lot about what they meant by that. And there is a lot of sentiment and perception out there that what we're doing is harmful in some ways. And I think if you, especially for the smaller property management companies, if you're in your town and your town's happy and people are happy, and that's great. It's nice to feel like we're just doing good, but the perception's out there. It's a reality. And so we have to make sure that we're thinking about what we want our reputation to be and how we're going to be proactive about improving that perception.
It's funny how often these interviews end on such encapsulating moments. A thoughtful, smart, young professional was called the devil by somebody who clearly didn't understand anything about Amanda or her commitment to her craft when done properly. But Amanda takes that slight in stride, which is what I think makes her a true leader, recognizing that it's up to us to write the story and determine our reputation, recognizing that no one else is going to do this for us. In fact, recognizing that if we sit around and whine enough and cross our fingers, the very worst examples of our craft, those will be the ones scoring the headlines. This is a pretty big lesson to take away from a conversation about finance, but it was only one of several pieces of wisdom from Amanda that I will not soon forget. I wanted to give a shout out to all the Amandas out there listening to our podcast, the young, sharp, convicted professionals who are relatively new to the space, at least compared to some of the veterans, but who want to leave this industry better than we found it. We need you. Amanda will be serving as an adjunct instructor with VRMB's Accelerator program, helping forward-thinking vacation rental managers get a grasp on their own finances in the most powerful of ways. And if you'd like to join her and me and over 1,000 of the world's most thoughtful vacation rental professionals, consider joining VRMB Communities. We have some of the brightest minds collaborating under one virtual roof. You can join at vrmb.com/join. Until next time. Just out of curiosity, what did you say? How did you respond when that person called you the devil?
I have to be honest, it was one of those situations where I didn't say anything, and then when I was in the shower later, I was like, I should have said this and I should have said that. It took me back. I was kind of in shock. I've never had anybody tell me that about anything before.